Hey everyone, welcome back to Intentional Guy. We are on our 28-day challenge still, and I am a little nervous about today. Because today I have one of my cousins here, John Reeder, and I asked John to come today and to share with us his story in life. And the show is all about sharing stories because each one of our stories is unique. But also, it's amazing how many people have similarities in their stories that they just didn't know until they heard that story, right?
There, especially when you're related.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, today I just kind of want to talk to you a little bit. If you would share just a little bit maybe about growing up, but really where, some of the things you've gone through life. You've been in the military. And you got children, you've got grandkids, and all that can mess with your faith a little bit,
It can, yeah.
Definitely can do that. But, with your life, you had a lot of people who were instrumental in getting you to be the man that you are today. And I'd kind of like for you to share some of that with us, if you would.
Okay, I started out growing up. I grew up, my first church was Grace Memorial Baptist Church in Indianapolis. And I came along just after the young lady that was on our church had gotten killed, in the cellar of crazy lady's house. You know how that goes. But you don't see it growing up, but Brother Julian, Pastor Julian was our pastor. And I know how that affected him and all, but I didn't know that till later. But
and that story you're talking about, they actually made a movie.
Yeah, we watched the movie about it.
Do you know what it's called? I forget.
Do you remember, Lisa?
I'll have to put it in there, but it was a traumatic event that took place.
Oh, it was. I mean, for Brother Julian, think about him not going over and checking on the story and knowing that she was in juvenile and going over and saying anything to it. I think I knew Brother Julian well as a kid, so I know how that affected him. And when he flew to Indianapolis every time that lady came up for parole or whatever, just the impact. And, honestly, I think that's how we became Thompson Road Baptist Church, is because we were stuck with that stigma from everything that happened then. But don't get me wrong, we had great people in our church. We had Brother Lonnie O'Wire. I mean, that guy, to me, one of my heroes in faith, you know what I mean?
Right.
Then we had Jim and Patsy. What is her last name? Sills.
Yeah.
And Patsy, she was always in the nursing home, nursery, and she was always there to get me on Sunday. If she wasn't there, I wasn't going to the nursery. You know what I mean? And to me, she was the most beautiful woman I've ever known. Just because I sat on the floor and I played with, all my friends from church. A lot of them ended up going to school with me, coming up through school. So, about 1970 or so, 69 maybe, Grace Memorial and another church over on Thompson Road in Indianapolis, they merged to become one church and become Thompson Road Baptist Church. Not sure what it was before that. But, me coming up through that, Brother Julian was my pastor. He was, so he died. You know what I mean?
Right.
You still think about him to this day, just the impact he had on my life. Because I was saved at a very early age, one of his services. And I remember going up and, my Uncle Melrose Ellis.
Yeah.
He's the one that sat down. He went through the plan of salvation with me. And we talked about it, and he's like, "You're really young, so, I worry that you don't understand this." And so we talked, and he's like, "You do understand this?" I said, "Yes, I do," So at that time, I was saved. I'm not sure how young I was.
So Uncle Melrose led you to Christ.
He did. Brother Julian's message, and Uncle Melrose, was one of the deacons. And so he had a lot to do with, to do with me growing up. You had Aunt Robbie, Of course, she was always teaching in a class or something, all my aunts. Aunt Reba was always there. Of course, I said Mary Ellis, my mom, my cousins, you know.
Right.
Majority of us were all started out there some way, somehow, because of Brother Julian.
Right.
You know, so I mean, I think all of us were under this message.
I think all our family, my dad, he got saved under that ministry. So, you know, we were all drawn there because I think that's who led Roy Jr. is probably who led most of our uncles and stuff to Christ.
You're right. You're right about it. I mean, good man. He, you know, and like you said, nobody's perfect. He has his demons.
Right.
Like I said, with things that happen in his life, I mean, his kids had a lot of issues they had to deal with. But, I mean, we were downtown Indianapolis. So, I mean, to me, nothing good goes on downtown Indianapolis. You know, it's a rough neighborhood growing up in. I mean, I fought, you know, of course, Dad, our family being from Tennessee, you know, on your mom's side.
Right.
And just, that's what I loved. I loved Tennessee. I loved going to Oneida, Tennessee, to Jamestown, Tennessee, to, you know, all that, seeing my uncles. Because when we were young, my great uncles were there.
Right.
So, I mean, we'd load up in the car and we'd show up at the door. Hey, we're here to visit. We did that to you guys. I know. And your mom was like, oh, hi, Roger. I guess you're here to visit, you know. And my dad would just go. He wouldn't call anybody. He wouldn't say, hey, you know, Sister Ella, we want to come visit. He didn't do that. He just showed up.
Hey, family, you should be able to do
You
that,
should,
right?
Nowadays, like, hey, can you give me a call before you come, you know? But that's just because you want to clean up and you want to have a nice house. Look, your house looking nice and ready for somebody to show up. But kind of what I grew up in was Thompson Road. We changed pastors and things like that. And, you know, to be honest with you, past Brother Julian, I had pastors that I had that, and I won't say names, but to me, he was always my pastor.
Right.
Until, you know, got 18 years old or so, started working for Joe Carr at Custom Concrete. So I moved up to my Uncle Roy Reeder's church, Mount Jerome Baptist Church, and that's where I met my wife, Lisa. I met Lisa, and down in the basement of Uncle Roy Reeder's church, house, actually.
Okay.
So Paul and Frank Davis, they called us and said, you know, they had my uncle call and say, hey, you know, come down here. There's a girl that wants to meet you in church. And you know how Roy Reeder was.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he was the matchmaker. And he says, there's a girl who wants to meet you at our church. Can you come down? I was like, not sure if I want to come. And finally, my best friend, Chris Burning, I called him. I said, hey, man, they're having a young adults thing. Because I was 19 years old, you know. I said, he wants me to come down there and meet a girl. You want to go with me? And of course, Chris is all the time, yes, let's go, you know. So we went down there. I got there and he's like, well, John, the girl has locked herself in the bathroom and she won't come out. And
She must have saw a picture of you, huh?
Apparently. she saw me at church is why she wanted me to, you know, meet her. So I go downstairs and Lisa and a friend of hers were playing cards, you know, or playing Monopoly or whatever it was they were playing. And Chris and I went down there and they're like, hey, be careful we play with you, you know. So it was like, sure. So that's how I met my wife. It went down there and I was playing cards with her, whatever, with her. And a few days later, I asked Missy Carr, I said, hey, you know, would you give me Lisa's phone number? Because Lisa ran around Missy Carr and Sonia Pennington. And so I called Lisa, asked her on a date, that kind of thing. And, you know, it wasn't long before, I mean, we really knew we were a thing pretty quick. You know, it didn't take long. You know, small town girls, 3 months, you're ready to get married.
Right.
That's just the way it is. So, you know, we got married 9 months later.
Oh, really?
I mean, it wasn't long, no. Of course, Roy Reeder married us. We were married at Mount Jerome Baptist Church. So, I mean, so much has went back to Mount Jerome Baptist Church for us. To me, this day, my letter's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, being in the military, you're all over the place.
Right.
But I did a transfer, you know, on faith to churches and things like that.
Right.
No profession of faith. And, but I could never pull my letter from Mount Jerome for because Thompson Road was my church home for so long, but after Brother Julian left, it was just kind of like not the same for me. I know for the Ellises, it wasn't the same. Of course, they worked really hard to make it,
Right.
a great church, Ross Bluff,
Mm-hmm.
all those people. But shoot, I spent so much time at my Rose Ellis's house with him, that Reba, talking. He was always guiding me on, he was always talking about Lisa. He's like, man, she came to church Sunday and you married a knockout, man. She looked like a model when she walked through there. So he always pumped that up for
Right.
me. So he was a great uncle and a great friend. He's one of my,
Right.
he wasn't my great uncle, but he's a great man and a great uncle.
I remember he always called me Dodo Bird.
Yeah, he always has names, like your dad. Your dad
Yes.
always had the names. So they used to call me Frogman.
Really?
Oh yeah, that started by Stevie Ellis, I think, or Cliff Ellis. I don't know, one of those two are.
Right.
We're going fishing or we're going to the lake, and we spent a lot of time together when we were young.
Right.
We were at lakes a lot. I mean, Roy Reeder wasn't there because he was pastoring. Your dad wasn't there a lot
Right.
because he was pastoring the church by that time.
In Chicago, right.
So it was like we had to go see everybody because it's hard for like Roy Reeder to. He still came and seen us. Don't get me wrong. Your dad still came and seen us.
Right.
And that's what my dad confided in me. He taught me to go back and see family always. So if I'll show up. I'll call
Right.
first though, but I'll show up, say, hey, what y'all doing? And we sit and laugh about the craziness our family has went through, and we went through some stuff.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. So I would say my uncles, from my great uncles to my uncles, have definitely guided me down that Christian path
Right.
all the way. There's things that you just, as you get older, that you deal with, like being in the military. I go in the military, and I told Lisa in '96, I said, listen, something bad's going to happen. I'm in the Army National Guard at the time. I said, something bad's going to happen, and we're going to be at war. And I don't really want to be at war with my National Guard unit
Right.
because I don't feel like I'll come back from alive. So I said, I want to go in the Army. Do you care if I just go ahead? She's like, you've always wanted to go in the military and just stay in the Army, just do it. So I did, went in the military. So first 3 or 4 years was very easy, 96 to, 2001. It was, we had our issues. I mean, we were still always training, always preparing to go to war, but, it was a lot easier. You had time to spend with your family
Right.
and do things. So, the me prior to September 11, 2001, and the me after that point are two different people. And the military changed me, war changed me that much. You're like, I'm going to be the same person when I walk out of this house as when I walk back in it. And you try really hard to focus on that. But, war happens.
And I imagine after 9/11, our country wasn't the same. after
No,
that.
we know that.
So how could our military men and women going into war and seeing and the things that you saw, how could that not affect you or change you? I mean, that's just a give me.
You're correct. It changed all of us, didn't it?
Yeah.
Now, for a while, it changed for the better.
Mm-hmm.
But then it started going down a slippery slope. Don't know when, don't know how, but I can put pieces together. I could share that with you, but we're not going into politics.
Right.
So, so my oldest kids, John and Julia, Julia was still pretty young. I'm not going to lie. John, he understood it a lot more. That's my oldest son. And I have 4 girls. I had Julie, Katie, Sarah, and Jenny. And, when I'm at war, to me, it's like war changed our family, changed our dynamics. I kept getting blown up over there with IEDs, things like that. I think there was a total of 7. There was 4 IEDs in Blast Zone 1, and they got blast zone 1 through 4, right? So blast zone 1 being right on top of you. So after I'd been blown up, I think the 7th time they sent me home. And they told me I wasn't going home in that year because they needed me too bad. I was supply sergeant for the unit, and they needed me. But after the 7th bomb hit me, or because to me it was like 4 IEDs, 1 missile, and 2 mortars.
So explain that more to me. When a bomb hits you, what? Explain that a little bit more to me.
So the bombs that hit me, they hit my truck. They put them in the ground. What they did, they put them under the pavement. You'd have a crack in the pavement or whatever, and pothole. Well, they would dig the pothole out, put the bombs in it, and then hide the wires going back to wherever they were going to detonate from. And then they would try to judge your speed and detonate the bomb when you were on top of it. So that's what they tried to me. They kept missing by just a little bit. But I did take 2 gunners off my truck, and we had to, one was because of an accident, because they had intentionally, in my opinion, blown up a electrical tower. So power lines would drape down over the road. And my truck was so tall that my whole convoy went through it, and I was the second to the last vehicle. And off to my left, there were guns over a ridge for whatever reason. Kind of find out they had been there since the war started, but nobody ever did anything with them. Well, that's the first time I'd seen them going down the MSR, which is the main supply route. So I'm looking at those. I'm keep yelling at my gunner. I'm like, keep looking. Nobody's on this road, because when a road becomes deserted in Iraq, never a good thing, because the locals know things are happening and they're staying away,
right?
Because they don't want to get shot. They don't want all the above. So basically, the first bomb was a small. It just took a mortar and actually put a detonator on it and blew it up on me. So it was small, but it was like the cone of the mortar stuck in my windshield right in front of me. So I had that cone shape in there. I replaced my windshield, I think, 7 times.
Wow.
So it was always something, but I wasn't in the same truck every time something happened. We had mortars that hit by my truck and blew the window out while I wasn't in it, things like that. But, you go through all that. Actually, the last one was on November, I think it was the 7th of 2003. But they had placed 155-pound mortars or bombs underneath in a pothole. So they had 5 in a pothole, and then they had 1 right front, 1 right rear. So whenever I went over it, they exploded it. Well, when they did, a piece of asphalt about yay big around, about this thick, come flying up and hit my gunner right in the side, so they shoved his ribs through his lungs, broke his sternum, and I won't say his name, but it hurt him really bad. So you never stop during an ambush. But I'd been hit so many times, like I said, by that time, our 2nd platoon leader, lieutenant, his wife flew Kiowas. So she started staying around or following us while I was in a convoy, because she kind of got it to know me through him. And during this one, the whole town came out and they sat on the side of the hill to watch me die, because I wasn't exactly the nicest guy, we'll say. I mean, to me, if you're at war, you're at war.
Right.
And if you're going to try to kill my buddies and my unit, I'm not going to treat you well whenever I capture you. So I didn't kill anybody that I know of. I tried pretty hard, but who knows,
Right.
Long distances, you're shooting stuff. But this particular bomb, it took out my gunner, and I had just a terrible headache after that. But he was blue when I took him off the truck, and they're like, well, just put him in the truck and we're going to run him to the fob. I said, no, sir. We need to land a copter right now. And he's like, I'm like, we need a copter. So they called in medevac, and a guy picked him up, And so my first sergeant, we went to the fob we were going to pick up equipment, food, things like that, beans, bullets, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so my first sergeant went on to, what was that, 82nd Cache, 83rd Cache, something like that, that was stationed at another fob. And he went over there to check on him to make sure he was still alive. And they said, whoever's calling the shots is pretty good, because he had probably 5 minutes to live when we got him. So they had to cut him from here to, all the way down. I don't know why they done the sternum, if they replaced with metal or what, but he was lucky he was alive.
Right.
No doubt, because he couldn't breathe, because his ribs went through his lungs. So luckily we got him in. But after that, I started talking about mass murder. And my commander was like, whoa, we got to send this guy home. So we had went through right at 7, maybe 8 anniversaries, because our anniversary is on the 17th of November, that we hadn't been together. I mean, we had been together. We'd ate McDonald's through the fence. My wife's right over here if I didn't say that before. But I mean, just the things we did on our anniversary just to see each other.
Right.
McDonald's through the fence, hand me fries or a burger, something like that. Or, all right, I'll meet you at a warehouse over here, say, and her and the kids would come over and they would, we'd see each other, because you're in the field a lot training.
Right.
Especially in October, November, December, because we have the breaks for Christmas and all that. And they want that stuff fresh in your mind when you get back, because you're going right back into training.
Right.
So because we've always got to be on time. So we had all that happen. What I never expected was when I got home on leave and I went back, there were so many things that happened to me. I didn't know in my wife's mind that, in her mind, I wasn't coming home. So when I did get home in April of the next year, my house was full of animals. And I'm not an animal guy, so my house is full of animals. And it hit me a couple months ago, or a couple weeks ago, matter of fact. I was just always confused on why the animals in the house. Then I was watching something, or someone said something. I'm like, she didn't think I was coming home, so she's preparing the kids for daddy not coming home. And that's why we had the animals and stuff in the house. So your marriage goes through that, your kids go through that. And I believe my daughter's disconnected with me through that, because we still don't have a good relationship.
Right.
After they got 16, 17, it was just like, I wasn't one of them dads, you did stupid stuff too. Because I'm not going to take it. We're not having that in my house. It's a Christian house,
Right.
We're not bringing that mess into my house. So, and as much as I do, how much mess can come into a house.
Oh, yeah.
And so, with kids and your marriage and all that, those are kind of the things that go on in the military.
I imagine when you came back home, the adjustment that had to take place for you, and especially your family, because a lot of times we think about the soldier who comes home and what he has to go through, which is a lot. But the family's going through it just as well.
Yeah, my wife could get at it way worse than I had it, because my mind was always on the next mission, because I do log packs during the day where you went and you picked up food and ammunition and all that stuff. Well, at night I would run mission. I was in a reconnaissance unit, so we would run missions at night. So
right.
During the day, I was so tired. It was like there was times I slept for days. We got invited to a, like a cookout over there where they had pulled goat, things like that. Well, I got real sick, and I think they tried to poison us, but I got real sick with that, and I think I slept something like 72 hours. Nobody's supposed to know that, but I slept for like 72 hours because I was so sick. Yeah, and a lot of us in the unit got sick when we ate that. Yeah. So there's several ways they try to kill you, right? In war, there's nobody your friend. And, when the president says, oh, the war's over, I looked at my commander. I'm like, this war, it ain't nowhere near over. What is he talking about? My commander's like, Zaire, this war's done. And I'm like, sir, this war's nowhere near done.
Well, let me ask you this. So where's your faith in all of this while you're over there?
Oh, my faith's very high while I was over there. I mean, even seeing the evilness in men, and even my thing was, I was a very good actor. So, in my opinion, I think I'm a very good actor when it comes to that stuff. So I want my enemy to think I'm going to kill you 5 ways from Sunday.
Right.
Because then they get scared and you can see it in their eyes. And once you see it, because they're getting ready to engage you, right?
Right.
And if you can change the look in their eye before they start engaging you, you've won the battle.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then it gets hot pretty fast.
Mm.
So luckily, and that's what my commander didn't understand. My first commander, we changed commanders out right midway through the year we were over there. And the first commander I had, Captain Zen, he understood me. And he understood the way I worked. My first sergeant understood that and the way I worked. But the new commander and the new first sergeant come in, they didn't understand that. Right. That for me, it was all an act. And but the other point I always made to them, said, you can do or say anything to me, but you see these boots here? They'd be walking back in my house when we're done. No stupid command, no nonsense is going to happen that I'm going to do to where they're not going to walk in the house.
Right.
But, I got put in situations, so like everybody did.
Right.
Where, you were compromised. But, so you see those things, so your faith gets really high because you're like, God has to be protecting me.
Right.
Because I should be dead like 7 times now. Easy. And they say a cat has 9 lives. They got nothing on me. Nothing. That's all I'll say. And my buddies from my unit can back me up on that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we go back to you coming home. So you're home now. How does that all go for you? Reconnecting now to civilian life, reconnecting back with your wife, and to a new normal.
Okay. Like I said, I planned on coming back home. My dad was in the Korean War.
Right.
And he was in the worst battle in that war. The
He
battle
was a war hero.
Yes. The Battle of the Chosin Reservoir. And my dad saved 3 men's lives. He got a Bronze Star at the V. That's it, because he disobeyed orders and he went and got them anyway because they said they're dead, leave them. And the Chinese had just come over the border and were fighting. I think we had probably 18,000, something like that, American soldiers and Marines fighting a force of 500,000 Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
So for us to be as successful as we were a nation was because of those 18,000 men. I'm going to tell you that right now. Look up the Battle of Chosin Reservoir, okay?
Okay.
But my father came home with a traumatic brain injury. We didn't know what to call it back then. And PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't understand it at home. And I mean, my mother pushed a lot of buttons because she didn't understand it. And same thing when I got home. So I come home. I know there's something wrong with my brain. So I'm like, hey, there's something wrong with my brain. They're like, whatever, there wasn't really any way to gauge that at the time. And then they started thinking, well, we need a way to gauge, what's going on with these guys' brains when they're getting hit with bombs and things like that. Because then there was no zones.
Right.
It wasn't zone 1 through 5. It was just an ID. Now, after that point, it got to the point that they're like, 2 IEDs, you're home, you're done.
Right.
Well, for me, I just kept going through them. Or a mortar would hit really close to me or something like that, but trying to reconnect when your brain is not right. And I didn't think I had PTSD. Yeah, I'm not quick to ignite. I will tell you as my kids, I would be like, hey, 2 hours from now, we're cleaning up the house. Be ready, I wouldn't go and get up, clean up the house now. It's more like, give them a couple hours. Hey, hour, remember, we're going to clean up the house. because we, always bought houses that didn't have no bedrooms. I had 5 kids, so we had to build bedrooms. So I was always, working the day, and at night I would be building, in the basement, building rooms or what have you,
Right.
And we always had to keep the house clean because of the dust from all that
Right.
goes anyway. But, yeah. So 2012 finally got in. They sent me to a doctor, to the traumatic brain injury on post on Fort Campbell because I was stationed there. And they were able to bring my wife in there, and me, and they're like, all right, here's our finding. They're like, the left side of your brain is pretty much, if you can look at it, it's all white. There's no red in it. You can see the little top splotches of red, which is blood flow to my left side of my brain. To the right side of my brain, it was fine. But until my wife actually seen that, you don't know that you're dealing with something like that.
Right.
Now, I had already, because of my refusal to, I did not want to be like my father and have all the troubles he had. So I used what brain I did have to try to overcome those things.
Right.
And you can to a point, but they pulled me in and they really started working with my brain to get me back to a setting I could function at good. They sent me to Nashville, Tennessee, the VA clinic, and they sent me to a specialist that helped me through retraining my brain to where even with the brain damage, I could still function really well and still be an intelligent human being, because that's what we all strive to be an intellect, that's
Right.
That's what our common thing is. We want to be an intellect. And so that helped me. But, to me, I have a traumatic brain injury. Yes, to me, that was it because everything fell under that. But they're like, well, PTSD crosses lines with it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, well, you're having trouble with your family, you're having, these issues. So we think you also have PTSD. And I'm putting it out there because that's something that's very personal. You don't tell people that.
Right.
They'll tell you the VA, nobody needs to know this, or this. But you go through a lot of interviews with psychologists. You go through a lot of, just talking to the different people that are intellects on mental health and that kind of thing. And they have to either say, hey, this person he's not recoverable. We're going to have to put him out of the military. He's going to be on disability the rest of his life. And, or this guy's fully functional, returning to duty. And by the time I was done, they said, hey, we're returning this guy to duty because his intellect is still there. He doesn't have a short fuse. He doesn't have all the things that line up, with someone that would be, have a mental illness the rest of his life. But what I do have to watch out for now is Alzheimer's and dementia.
Well, that runs in our family, so
it does. And then traumatic brain injuries and stuff
add to it.
They bring it on faster. So every time I forget someone's name, like at the funeral, Dennis Hills, like I could forget Dennis Hills, I did. I forgot his name, and he thought I was joking with him. And he probably still does unless he watches this.
Right.
But, you see those things. And my buddy, Tom Carr, with him, I probably got PTSD when his brother got killed.
Right.
Because, him and I were working together one day and we picked up his brother and we went over to, waterproof wall when I was doing basement walls of custom concrete. And the back of the truck blew up, killing his brother. I tried to get through the fire and saving him. I was still trying to save him when Tom Carr just grabbed me. And Tom was a big boy at the time, worked out all the time. He just grabbed me and pulled me away from the truck. And he had to say, John, Jim's gone. We got to let him go. And we got to get away from that truck. Because he was afraid that the other tanks that were on it, and they had full of mastic that, you spray on the wall to waterproof the basement walls. So, I went through that and, we'd come upon wrecks when I was a kid where a train hit a car and my dad had to go over and stay with the guy till he passed away and things like that. So, for my dad continued even after Korea, for things like that to happen to him.
Yeah.
You know, but like I said, God puts you in a place like he did with me through Jim Carr, to where when the things happened in Iraq, I knew how to respond. And I was also trained in, as a combat lifesaver. So you learn how to give IVs, you learn how to save people's lives so they don't bleed out. And I mean, Lisa knows this day, we don't go anywhere without a red backpack.
Right.
So I got tourniquets in the car. I've got all that. And I try to go prepared,
Right.
It's like, I'm a big 2A advocate.
Well,
So you don't want people to die. Even if you had to shoot somebody, you still want to save their life because, as a Christian, life is so important to you.
you're right.
So you look at those things.
Well, if you go through all the things that you've gone through in your life, one of the things you go very well with what our podcast is about being intentional. And everything in your life led you to those moments of where you are and who you are. He put the right men in your life with our uncles and things like that, Roy, Julian, and other people who came in at the right moments in your life to help you become that man that you were striving to be. But then you go through this traumatic war, and probably were able to deal with a lot of the stuff that you did because of the character of the men that you had surrounded yourself with prior to that.
Ding, ding, ding.
And so to me, it's really important. And this is one of the things I talk about on the show, is how important other men in our lives are, because we're the sum of the 5 people we hang out with. The problem is when we get older, those friendships people move, people die, things happen, and we don't replace those. And I've learned in the last couple of years how crucial that is, to constantly be making sure that's full so that I can be what I need to be for my wife, my family, but also for the things that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow and what situation. You would have never prepared yourself for what you did, because you would have never in your million years imagined you would have been attacked with bombs as many times as you were.
Right.
That you would see some of the devastation that you saw, and that you lived through some of the things that you did. You can never plan for that, because you can never imagine that happening. But God has a way of putting those right people in the right thing. And so first off, I say thank you for your service. I don't know if I've ever told you that before, but I appreciate your service.
Thank you for that.
And what you've done for our country. But also, I appreciate you for the leaders that you are in our family. Because in our family, I see you trying to be that guy who, let's keep our family together. As our uncles and our parents are passing away, I don't want to lose contact with those cousins.
No.
And it's easy. I look at it right now. I mean, we just went to Uncle Roy's funeral, and the sad thing is how many of my cousins I really don't know.
It is.
And that's a shame on my part, because there's no cousin. We don't have any cousin out there that doesn't want to know. We don't want to know each other, but we've allowed life to become busy, and family is so important.
It is.
It really is.
Because who replaces those men that you lose?
Right.
And it should be cousins.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It should be men that you went to church with when you were younger, or that you had a hand in helping through life. You know what I mean? Like my best friend's Chris Burning. And I mean, that guy's wherever we were in the world, we went to Indianapolis. His home was open to us. And still at this point, he invites us down here to Florida to spend the winters.
Right.
He pays for it, and he's like, I don't want your money, John. I want you to stay down here. I said, no, I don't want to be a mooch,
Yeah.
But he's like, no, we just want you to be here. We love you. We want you to be here.
Yeah.
So my thing is, I met Chris Burning at Thompson Road Baptist Church. That's where I met him. We've been friends for something years.
Yeah.
And still, but man, I think, Cliff Ellis, he had a lot. He keeps being one of those people in my life. His son Paul, he was at the funeral. He was like, you took my bass boat, right? Because I bought a bass boat from Cliff, and so Paul put a sign on it. This boat is not for sale, or something like that. Not for sale, whatever. So when I came, I would see the sign, not for sale, and I was like, I don't want to buy his boat, and Cliff's like, we're getting another one. He'll be all right. So at the funeral, he's like, you took my bass boat, and I was just like, I was so glad. So, hi, Paul, gave him a hug, but I want all my cousins to know, number one, I love you, point blank. You can be hardcore soldier all your life, but when I retired, I said, the one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that people that are good people, number one, that they know they're valued and they're loved. Because when you're in the military, you're not in that mindset a lot of times. But I was with even my soldiers even tell you, if they were going through cancer or something like that, I would hug them. I'd say, I'm praying for you. I don't want you to go through this. I mean, I work for division headquarters on 101st, and I would have women come in that their husbands left them or whatever, and they'd want to see the general.
Right.
And for whatever reason, it's like, Sergeant Reeder, go talk to him. Yeah. And I'm like, why am I talking to him? Well, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I got put in that spot a lot as an NCO, and boy, I relied on my chaplains.
Yeah.
Oh, good night. We so many times we want to say, well, I'm a Catholic and, Catholics are right, or I'm a Protestant and Protestants are right in the military. That's the word for, the Baptist and things like that. But, so many times a Catholic priest would just give a message to them that you were just dumbfounded with how well that they would lead somebody through those crises.
Yes.
And they taught me these things, and it helped a lot, So we can't discount people just because we don't like their faith or think their faith is, or they're going to hell because they're Catholic, or, Catholics thinking we're going to hell because we're Christians, all that nonsense. The point is, that's, to me, that's something Satan does.
Yeah.
Well,
and I think we have to be intentional in reaching out to those, because I'm just going to be honest with you, like me, I felt like a throwaway person my whole life. So I think part of me not knowing all of my cousins and stuff as well as I do is because I had so much shame and guilt in my life.
Oh yeah.
And,
I read your book.
And honestly, I think we became closer after I read my book, because after you read my book, because you contacted me,
of course,
and you were one of the first relatives to reach out to me in that, and love me in spite of my story, and that, to me, that's what's really important to me, is what you modeled is, there's no great people out there. There's no people out there without any problems.
No, there's not.
And there's a lot of people, because of you, because of other people, that spirit of being felt thrown away is gone.
Good.
And it's an amazing thing, because after 15 years, I found restoration, but the enemy wanted to keep me,
of course,
there. And it was nice going, as nice as it can be going to a funeral, but it was nice to go at Uncle Roy's funeral. One was, I heard so many stories that I never knew about him. I never knew about him, but then to talk to some of the relatives that I did, some who read my book and said, I read your book, and we discussed a little bit. But just, you got to have family.
You do.
Family's important.
Very important.
And God's given that to us. And I think what I got out of that was I want to be more intentional in reaching out to those family members, because after, we don't have a lot of our aunts and uncles left,
No.
And,
I have my mom, you have your dad.
yeah, your mom and
That's it, right?
my dad. Yeah.
That's it. So
So I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank you for sharing your story with us today. I want to thank you for your service and everything. And if you guys are out there, you've been in the military, you've gone through some of the stuff that we've talked about, there's always hope.
and there's always help.
There's always help. But also we have to be intentional in what we're doing. The choices we make are so important. They're just so important. And it doesn't matter what bad choices you made maybe in the past. What matters are the choices you make today.
They are.
They
are, and where you move, how you move forward.
Yes. And if you need help, that's where we should be able to have family and close men like we had in the days with Roy Julian, with Melrose Ellis, people like that. I want to be that for my cousins' kids and stuff if they need that. That there's men in our family who have fought the fight and we can go to that will love us where we're at and help us through it.
And they're the ones you can hug and say, hey, I love you.
Yep.
Most guys, you get one of those bumps to, and you're glad to see each other. But I mean, your cousins, those men in your life. There's only a few men in your life you can actually hug and feel like I'm not,
Yeah.
it's not weird,
Right.
So yeah, I enjoy that, and I enjoyed going to each one of my cousins. Hey, I'm your cousin John.
Yeah.
So.
But we need to do reunions now and quit with the funerals.
Thank you.
All right. So
Yes.
to all our cousins watching, Sharon, I think we're going to lay it on you. You need to do a reunion. So, but John,
I agree. Sharon should be it, right?
Yeah.
Johnny, Phil.
Yes.
Come on. I mean,
Steve.
and bringing
Steve,
Steve,
they're the oldest in
yeah,
the family.
of course.
They should be setting that example for us younger ones.
That's what I say.
We're in agreement.
Okay. So y'all know that's coming. You need to plan it. I'll be there.
Me too.
We know why,
Well, folks.
as long as you pay for it.
Yes, because it's my wife. I don't know about that. Well, listen, everyone out there watching, thank you for watching this episode of Intentional Guy. I hope this has blessed you. And until next time, just keep being intentional. We'll talk to you later.